Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pot Strickland. I'm your host, Shwinny Poo, in this episode 417. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter /X. Stacy, how are you doing on this Tuesday night? Or Wednesday night, sorry.
I feel very humid and sweaty.
That's awesome. That sounds great.
I can paint you a picture if you want, but
don't think anybody wants that picture painted. Maybe your fiance, perhaps. Even her, I suspect maybe she'd prefer if you took a shower at some point. Maybe strong preference. Anyway, we are not here to talk about how the humidity affects your body, Stacy. We are here to talk about basketball. Before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First being the Strickland has Instagram. Check that out. That is at the Strickland on Instagram. We are posting all kinds of new content on there. The Strickland also has a YouTube channel where you may watch this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrick.land. There's a link to take you to the merchandise store, and you can find all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland's podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, our newest podcast that is hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Merrill, one of the best in the business. And now you also get access to Strictly NFL, which is hosted by Constantine Metricos and is about the NFL. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and a $100 tier. There's a variety of additional benefits of listening to pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours. Truly, one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not, none of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. BetOnline. The game starts here. So, the Knicks continue to not have a backup center, established backup center anyways, but they did make a move this week, which was signing Cam Payne to a 1-year, $3.1 million contract. That is the veteran's minimum. He only counts, I think this is relevant to mention, he only counts as, I believe, $2.1 or $2.2 million in outgoing salary if they were to aggregate him in a trade. So the bump you get from being a longer tenured veteran does not matter as far as trading.
Is it still a minimum technically though? So you can't aggregate it. So
yeah, you can aggregate it in season, but you can't. It doesn't. You can only add one to the deal. So that's what that is. I don't know. I didn't really have a strong feeling about this. To me, that's probably a reflection of them being like, well, I mean, we already knew they were not, that they like Deuce, but they're not obviously sold on Deuce as far as his ability to run an offense. We know they like Tyler Kolek, but he's a rookie. And as much as they love him, and they did lavish him with a 4-year, $9 million contract, the richest in NBA history for a second-round pick. Again, he is a rookie, and they can't bet with certainty that he's going to be able to do what they want, need, expect from a backup point guard, next season, this upcoming season. And Cam Payne is solid at that price, to be honest. Like, I don't love the guy. I don't think he's an amazing player. I'm not trying to gas this move up.
He's in better shape than a lot of other campaigns right now that are going on. So
he is
too soon.
I don't know. Who knows whose campaign we'll be talking about soon. But yeah, I mean, he's fine. Like, he's a fine veteran backup point guard. At the minimum, I think that's plenty of value. And the other thing too, which I think needs to be mentioned, is like, if we think Deuce McBride is as good as you think, I think, whoever, I mean, we all have varying degrees, but we all, see, I'm assuming most people listening to this podcast think Deuce McBride's a pretty solid player, especially after the last season. If you think Deuce McBride is good, I don't think you should be worried about this. Like, this is not real competition. This is, if Deuce McBride cannot beat out Cam Payne for a rotation spot, that probably just says something about Deuce McBride. And I don't think Deuce McBride is, shaking and, I don't think he's quaking.
Is
in
the
fear.
LeBron meme?
Yeah, I don't think he's like terrified. Oh my God, I can't believe they brought in Cam Payne. How could they do this to me? It's a veteran minimum contract. It's a guy that you bring in for depth. And like, go look at last year's roster. Go look at some of the fucking veteran minimum guys we had to bring in when we were super shorthanded. We had that game where like Charlie Brown Jr. got minutes and like Daquan Jeffries, and you're just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Well, I mean, they tried Shake and Flynn, and neither of those were viable options, right? So
yeah,
this would be comparable to that.
Yeah, and they used
and they lost Burks, right? So
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Apparently, they made an offer to Burks. That's according to our pal CP the franchise over at KFTV, the Burks Whisperer. But yeah, look, he obviously decided to take a guarantee of a bigger opportunity in Miami, so he's got that. But the Knicks clearly we're still kind of weighing their options. I don't think they don't fully trust Deuce to run the offense. We know, based on reporting that was part of their thinking in going and getting Alec Burks as part of that package at the deadline with Bogdanovich. So for them to hedge again and bring in a guy like Cam Payne who cost them nothing, he cost them money that he doesn't really cost them anything. Then you use an exception to get him. I think that's kind of shrewd, and I think it's fine. Like I said, like we already saw this with Quick, right? Like he came in his rookie year, right? He beats out whoever for minutes. Austin Rivers, right? Austin Rivers is gone. Frank is gone. He beats both those guys out. Next year, Kemba comes in. Burks is back. Derrick Rose is back. Ultimately, quickly ends up playing more minutes than those guys. And, we're not going to need to debate about how it happened. I'm just saying, played a lot of minutes that year. Third year, right? Oh my God. Did we get the first rumors of like, oh, they're listening to Quickly. They're seeing what's out there for him. And the big change they made a quarter of the way through the season was, okay, we're done with Rose. We're done with Fournier. We're done with Reddish. And Quickly is going to get a lot more minutes along with, Grimes and Deuce actually started playing then too. And he beat he won his minutes every year, even this year, even though his minutes were tailing down towards the end. Obviously we know that was not really about performance. He was competing for those minutes. So they're not, I don't think they care about bringing in competition for guys. I actually think they want competition for guys. And, remember like the fucking stupid Fizdale quote of like, keep what you kill. There's some like actual benefit to that mindset if you cultivate it in a certain way. And I do think they feel like, hey, look, like our job is to bring in talent and make this team the best it can possibly be to the best of our abilities. And, to their credit, this is like, if they had not signed DiVincenzo last summer, right? Because they would have been like, well, we have Quickly, we have Grimes, we have these guys. We don't really need Dante. It's actually kind of a positional logjam. Like, guess what? Would have been a bad fucking decision. Been a really bad decision. And pointing to things like that, and then obviously you get the benefit of Dante playing at the level he did and whatever. This is why you make these moves. And in this case, again, it's a veteran's minimum. So it's not even like they're really injecting some huge piece into the equation here. It's like, hey, this is a solid depth piece. And if need be, we think he can step in and give us better minutes than like, yeah, to your point, Malachi Flynn or whoever. And whoever was available at that price point in the free agent market. And I kind of just find that hard to get upset about.
Yeah, I mean, even with Dante, I think the biggest thing was you get this shooter with range. There a lot of people made a big deal about it. Oh, you give him $50 million. That's like my pet peeve, by the way. Don't use total contract value to make the numbers look bigger. Talk AAV, talk percentage of cap. Don't be an asshole. If you know better, then do that. And if you don't know better, then maybe you should tweet about other things. or don't tweet. It's. I don't think it's as binary as they don't trust Deuce to run point guard. I think even those like us who are in on Deuce and see the improvement he made last year, there is still uncertainty until in terms of how high he goes there, right? There is still uncertainty and like, can he really run an offense? And I think there were mitigating factors. I brought this up. He played often with Precious and another big. Sometimes even Hart was on there as well, so it's really no spacing. But he struggled to handle ball pressure. He wasn't aggressive enough until late in the season when he really knew his minutes were guaranteed. And so there is still some uncertainty there. And if you have the ability to sign a guy on a veteran minimum who gives you insurance with no downside, why would you not do that? Like we've seen Cam Payne literally against the Knicks prove that he's capable of handling. I know. I was more
so
annoyed.
fucking annoying. He was actually like really annoying in that series, and he's honestly I feel like he's low key been a Knicks like.
Yeah, there were games with the Suns too, because the shot is so ugly. But he can shoot the ball, he can run the offense. He's a better ball handler than Deuce at this point. And then the other part of it is, and this is, I think, why depth versus star power has been leaning towards star power for most of recent memory, is that like we harp on Tibbs for not tapping into the Knicks' versatility, but it's hard. But there could be times when Cam Payne is a better fit for the lineup than Deuce, right? Maybe in that Indiana series where Deuce's defensive ability was muted because he really struggled with the matchup with TJ McConnell and he couldn't quite give it back to him on offense. Maybe Cam Payne is a better guy for that. But this is just they're playing for a championship. They're not. This is not a development story. If Deuce wins, Deuce wins. If he doesn't, they have insurance. They have insurance in Kolek. They have insurance in Cam Payne. They have and same thing. You drafted this guy in the second round. You really like him. You're not giving him shit. This is not a team that, like, it would be one thing if they're coming off 17 wins. They are, and they are at every position going to have backups on backups in terms of plans. Deuce can't handle the point. You have a veteran point guard and you have an up and coming college star. You need to trade Deuce, by the way, to shore up another position, which we can talk about in a minute. You now have that more flexibility, right? That is probably, in hindsight, getting Dante was not necessarily a sign that IQ was going to be traded, but it definitely made it a lot easier to stomach that.
Yeah, like if Dante had come in and sucked ass, then it would have been a different thing, right? We don't know how they would have reacted, but like if you sign a guy and they're good, then it gives you more flexibility to do different things. And look, it's also worth mentioning they signed Cam Payne to a 1-year veteran minimum, right? Let's say they trade Deuce for whatever. We'll get into what they would trade. Let's just say Deuce goes out and trade or whatever. If Cam Payne balls out, the Knicks aren't going to keep him. They're not going to be able to, because some team will just come in and offer more money than the Knicks would be able to. So like these are also part of the consideration. And that's why like I don't personally view, I just thought the initial reaction, like, oh my God, they're signing Cam Payne. This has to mean Deuce is going out in a trade. And it's like, it could happen. It could definitely still happen. I'm not ruling it out, but I don't think that's a given. Like they valued Deuce enough when he wasn't playing. When you could have just convinced anybody, like, this is just fucking give Deuce McBride up if you need to get Josh Hart. Give Deuce McBride up if you need to clear space for Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. Like they never gave him up in those trade talks, and they specifically put it out there they valued him. So if they valued him then, why the fuck would they not value him highly now? When he's on, he's probably on the best non-rookie scale value contract in the NBA.
Worry about his value being hurt by the fact that outside backup point guard, there's probably not a lot of minutes for him. I mean, Dante is likely to be the backup shooting guard. You'd think he'd get all those.
It's not, but we saw how this all unfolded last year too.
Yeah, but they have more depth at those positions. OG is going to get hurt at some point.
Right.
Bridges has been an Iron Man.
Bridges is the only real addition to the depth, right? Like, Randall will be back, but like Mitchell missed time. Like there's always just trickle down effects of various injuries, right? I understand like Mitch missing time doesn't
Yeah,
directly.
but those injuries were the difference between Deuce getting 15 minutes or 13 minutes versus, he's getting 25, 30. Like, he's probably not going to get that very often. Like, his average minutes will go down. The same thing if it happened to IQ with an addition like that, you can bet it's going to happen to Deuce. And does that hurt his value at all? I think that is a consideration.
No, it's definitely a consideration. My point is mostly just that like I just don't view Cam Payne as like, oh, that's it. It's inevitable. Deuce is gone. Like, no, that's nonsense. And also like again, Deuce should just be able to outplay him. Like that's it. Just straight up outplay him. Like, like in like in Rounders, where he's like, yeah, I just wanted to outplay Johnny Chan on this hand.
All right, he's not Johnny Chan, bro. Let's relax.
Cam Payne? I don't know.
That also, you probably know more about this than me, but that seemed extremely unrealistic.
That scene is actually very stupid. Yes,
like that movie isn't. It's pretty realistic. It feels like, besides John Malkovich's horrible Russian accent, but
iconic line though.
What?
Pay that man his money.
Pay that man his money. Anyway, yeah, he should. It's also going to come down to considerations of the thing with me, even when they drafted Kolek, is like people were like, well, Deuce can play the two. He's really a two guard. I think you lose a lot of the benefit of his defense if you play him as a two. Like, I love him
next
at the
to
point
Kolek, you do for sure.
Or Cam Payne. I think that.
Yeah, no, I'm saying like I don't agree with that. It depends on who is kind of like the one.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to see more IQ Deuce. I mean, that was the lineup that brought us back in that Miami game. Which the fact that I'm talking about it 2 years later when we're a contender says a lot. But
well, even Brunson Deuce was really good, and that's because Brunson he can hold up a little bit more, right? He's stronger, he's more physical, so he can guard up a spot potentially.
But it's also
he's also an amazing offensive player.
Yeah, so that covers up for Deuce. Yeah. Like, is Kolek good enough where like you get that offensive benefit? He's looked good in summer league. I'm not gonna. We can talk about summer league and Kolek afterwards. But I think to me it seems
and
like
how he's changing your opinion of white people.
He's mitigating the JD Vance effect. And but by the way, if you got the same melanin tone as me and Shwin, go look at the reactions of conservatives when they found out that JD Vance's wife is
pretty good.
Honestly,
if you're just a well-adjusted human being, check it out.
But I think that all of these moves, like I think people view things as too much binary still. And if you get that this front office, to the point of frustration, has never been binary, this is Schrodinger's front office. Everything is keeping all of the fucking possibilities open. This is like a quantum computing front office. If you don't know what that means, what I'm saying is you don't have to pick one fucking switch or another. You can exist in a combination of states. There is a state that exists in which they trade Deuce for center depth or for another wing or for fucking value. There is a state that exists in which they keep him. This was the exact same thing with IQ. This was the same thing. Remember how long we talked about pick a lane, guys? You got to pick. You either are going to develop the kids or you're going to win. Remember how often we bitched about that?
I never bitched about that. I always thought it was stupid.
Oh, Shwin. Come on. You have said that at least once.
I was always
they need to pick.
No, okay. I was always of the opinion they needed to pick a lane, but I never felt strongly about like. To me, that always felt like people were upset. I'm not saying you. I'm saying I felt like when people said that was like, I can't believe you didn't trade for Donovan Mitchell. I can't believe you didn't trade for star player X or star player B or whoever. That's where I always push back on that. Because I was like, I'm actually fine with like just playing these young guys, but I don't know, just fucking play the young guys then. That was it. That was only my whole stance to that. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, it really was only that 2022 lost season.
Where and even that by the end, when they like course corrected, I was like, all right, it's still fucking annoying. Alec Brooks and Evan Fournier are starting, but I can at least like live with these guys are all playing a lot of minutes. Cool, great, fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that was at the end, but
yeah,
the point is there was a long time when people were like, "What are you doing? Are you draft and develop? You just traded picks for, Dallas's glorified starting point guard, right?" You traded picks to sign him, right? And this guy averaged 16 points a game, and you give him $100 million, and what's it going to be? What are you doing? And part of that is just as fans, we want that certainty. Like everybody who's like freaking out about everything the Knicks front office does, you want that certainty to know. All right, we're not rolling into the season with Jericho Sims as the backup 5. All right, Deuce has a defined role, and let's see what happens. We prefer certainty to uncertainty, but that also removes a lot of advantages from the front office. So they're always going to keep all pathways open. They are Doctor Strange. They see 14 million paths at once, and they haven't seen the one that gets them there, but they're keeping them all open yet. So,
yeah, I mean, to go back to the thing about like Pickling, I think what made it always hard because they don't operate in a way that's exactly. I think they do operate in a very unique way relative to the rest of NBA front offices because of kind of the weird path they've taken to get to where we are. But I think for them, it's always just about like, where's the value? Like, where's the value in anything? So that's why they always are willing to hop around the board on draft night. And we're like,
it's all a big nothing. Life's all a big nothing.
But we don't know what they're doing on draft night. They're always hopping, and we're like, what are they doing? And it's like I'm sure there is. I'm not trying to minimize the idea that there's not I'm sure there's a long-term strategy and values that they're adhering to, but I think their decisions ultimately come down to value. And it's like, okay, does the value meet the criteria we need? And that's why they didn't trade picks for a long time. And value can change, right? Value changes based on where you are on your team building. And so for a long time, it didn't make sense for them to trade any of our young players because they're like, well, why would we trade our young players? Because we don't have like a set cornerstone piece or two that we know are worth investing in. Like I actually listened
on the picks.
Yeah, of course.
Until a year or two ago, the picks were probably. I mean, I'm sure they have analytics that say what do we project to pick at in those Michael Bridges years.
Yeah,
and they probably figured out that those picks are not going to be much higher than 24.
Yeah, I'm sure their calculations were like, we're giving up the equivalent of like 3 20s picks and maybe one that at the very end that could tail out into the lottery or something like that. But actually like I was listening to Zach Lowe's pod that he did with Pelton this week. I think it was Pelton. Who knows? And they were talking about, the decisions you make, like you kind of have to judge it in terms of, well, if you had not done the trade, would your situation be any better or different, whatever? And that's kind of how I think they look at it, where it's like, okay, well, if we do this trade, are we good enough to where the next sequential move we make can move us up into here, and then does that next move, like I think that's how they view it. And it's like for the longest time it didn't make any sense because you're trading out if you're trading out your young guys and your picks to get Donovan Mitchell, right, as an example. Okay, great, that now you are a playoff team. You're a playoff team. You're a playoff team. Now how do you go from that? Let's say you had done that trade. Now the next step is, okay, we're a good playoff team, but we don't have enough to be a contender. Now with what you have left, do you think that you'll be able to level up and become a contender? And I think that calculus changed for them the moment that Jalen Brunson took the step he took in the 2022-23 season. And they were like, okay, well, now it's different. Now we have a guy we're fairly confident can be the best player in a championship team, at least the best offensive player in a championship team. And that means our picks aren't, I mean, the calculus, if you remember, you mentioned when did it really, I think it changed by the end of that 23 season because they traded a first round pick for Josh Hart in that season, right? So like they had already kind of figured out like, all right, if Josh Hart is who we think he's going to be, like this pick is not going to haunt us. We're going to give a fucking 20s pick and solidify ourselves in the playoffs here with a chance to make some noise. Like, and it did that, right? And so I think it again, like this year, it's like, okay, well, we don't want to give up quickly in the summer, or we don't like, and then it finally got to a point where it's like, okay, well, now we will give up quickly in RJ for OG Anunoby, because that we're not giving up any picks, and we think this move takes us to another level. And then they were right. And when they did the Grimes and Fournier trade for Burks and Bogdanovich, and I'm not saying I totally recognize this in the moment, but I do think it's worth remembering. And Fred Katz had this report. A lot of the beat guys had this report, and I think we'd all kind of figured that part of the reason that they were really, really wanted that Bogdanovich contract was because they could use it again in a trade for this upcoming season. And I think the part that really matters here is, to me, I think they were like Grimes, he's not going to play a lot the rest of the season. And obviously he ended up playing very, very little after the trade, right? I think he played like he played 2 fucking games for the Pistons. One of them was against us. And next year, he's effectively like in a contract year. So he's off his rookie scale deal. He's only cheap for another year. We maybe are trading him at the highest value that we're going to be able to trade him for at this point in time. Not saying that was his highest. Obviously, we know that was not the highest trade value he had. Just saying at that point in time, there's probably little chance they were going to use his value is going to bounce back up. And as it turned out,
do you think there was a locker room stink he was making at all, or were there those kind of issues coming into play? You think?
I will talk about that in a second. But let me finish this. But like, so then it's like, okay, now we have the Bogdanovich piece, and then it got to the point where it's like, okay, I think you see all the rumors that were there with Paul George, kind of before we found out the Mikal Bridges. Obviously, found out about the Mikal Bridges trade, but I think they were already in the, if you kind of hear about what the asking price was from the Clippers for Paul George, at least from the Warriors, it involved multiple first-round picks. It involved they wanted one of the young guys. I think it was Kuminga. So like, if we use that as kind of like a template for what it might have cost to get Paul George, and remember, if you trade for Paul George, you're going to give him a max contract. Like it was going to be a substantial portion of picks in all likelihood. And instead they take those picks, they get Mikal Bridges. But the point is here, like, value changes, right? And they obviously have done this. And I think with Deuce, his value, like, and I've argued this, I think you could argue as you did, and I think this is fairly accurate. This might, in actuality, be the peak of his value. This might be. Because if he doesn't play a lot of minutes this upcoming season, obviously his value will go down. And right now, let's say you just shopped him on the market. First of all, I guarantee if you shop him on the market right now, you would get at least get a first round pick that's guaranteed to convey, and maybe a few good seconds. I wouldn't be surprised if you got more than that. But he's at the start.
Could you get Cam Thomas?
I think you can get Cam Thomas. But you can. But it's like a 3-year, $13 million extension. It's just starting now. Like it is just starting this year. So you basically, if you traded him this summer, if you traded for him this summer as another team, you would have him under contract for 3 more years at a fucking on a descending contract that is cheap as hell. Like that's a great value. So, is that where they see the value with him? Maybe. I mean, I'm sure it's part of their consideration of all things. I just don't think that Cam Payne is much of a tell.
Yeah, and they have all these options. Let's say they need to use Dante in a trade. That's not out of the realm of possibility. I think they would very much prefer to avoid that. Let's say a team is a contender and they're like, we want Dante, one of the top 5 shooters in the NBA. Having Deuce there and the Cam Payne now to take over that backup slot makes sense, right? It's just the team wants heart. They have all of these options, and they're not going to lock themselves. They're not going to lock themselves into vets. But what we've had to tell themselves is, even when IQ looked good, they're not going to lock himself. They were not going to lock him into backup point guard after his freshman year. They're not going to lock him into freshman year. His rookie year, they weren't going to lock him into the starting position after his second year. Also, I think there's a lot of debate about the Knicks didn't know Jalen Brunson would be this good. Maybe not 35 in a playoff series good. I think they had a feeling he'd be an all-star.
This is the thing, is like they might not have. He was literally a pull-up 3-point shooting leap away from being an all-star point guard.
You're dropping 41 on Mitchell anyway.
Yeah, I think it's also kind of bullshit where it's like, what other team gets talked about that? Like, do you think the fucking Celtics traded for Derek White and they were like, oh yeah, we know he's going to turn into our fucking sharpshooter from three? No, like
Isaiah Thomas from the Suns, even right? He was
yeah,
sixth man before they got him.
like this is like, if you sometimes you make bets on things because you feel good about them and you see something there that other people don't, and the consensus is lower. So to everybody else, it's like, well, you got lucky. And in your head, I mean, yeah, there's always an element of luck and everything, but you might have also, I mean, it's not unreasonable for people who knew Jalen Brunson better than anybody else in the entire fucking world might have believed more in him because of that. And I just believed in him more, but like, we're like, no, I've seen it. Like I've seen this. I've
It's
seen
like
him do
the
this.
mean of that distribution may not have been as high as what we've seen, but that tail, the high end, was right. So
Yeah.
but anyway, so my point was keep all their options open. I don't think Cam Payne. This is what teams do, by the way. This is what Knicks fans are also adjusting to the fact that, again, this is what championship teams do. Signing Kemba meant something completely different than signing Cam Payne. People by the way, could Cam Payne have maybe gotten more money to like go to Washington and jack up shots and like be a tank commander? I mean, I'm going to ask you, but I think the answer is yes, right? Washington might not be the best example. They drafted Bob and he looks good, but like I'm sure like he's a better player than Min. Whatever you think about his performance, he played pretty substantial minutes against the Knicks in a series that Sixers were, desperation mode the whole time. We're adding a good vet for an affordable contract. That's just what they're going to do. That's period. Does it give them some more flexibility as an added bonus? Yes.
And also,
I also think it's telling.
I also just don't think Cam Payne is like, first of all, you sign a guy to a vet min, it says something about their value. And this is not like a weird Gary Trent Jr. situation, right? Where he's like, he wanted X, he wanted fucking 20 million a year. And the market was like, you can get like 7. And he's like, all right, I need to go rehab my value. So I'm going to take the vet min to play on a contender and try and play my value up. This is not that
situation.
Yeah, this is a totally different thing. If you sign a vet min in this situation as Cam Payne, you kind of know what the deal is. Like he's in that phase of his career. I think he signed a veterans minimum last year with Milwaukee. So like he knows what phase of his career he's in. And he might have got he went back to Milwaukee in that Grayson Allen deal. Whatever. The point is like when you sign this
vet, how did he end up in Philly?
I think they traded him for Pat Bev.
So he's still fun at the beginning of last year.
Yeah. So like he knows what it is. And, based on what I've seen of him, of his career, he doesn't seem like this raging asshole type who's going to be like, oh my God, like, I need, like, I don't think he's going to be malcontent in the locker room about his role. I think he knows what he signed up for.
Do you think he'll use his real name?
Yeah, maybe. We should make Terry Johnson jerseys, though. But, like, he obviously has a really good friendship with Mikal Bridges, too. Like, that, it does help. That stuff like that does help. And we know the Knicks have had interest in Cam Payne.
Does Mikal Bridges not have any other friends on the team?
No. And we also know that Cam Payne, like he's a guy the Knicks have been interested in previously. They've kicked the tires on him a few times. So, when all those things align, it's like, all right, sure, yeah, let's bring this guy in and we'll see what's like. That's good with us. And that, now we have an extra option if we need it. But I don't know. I thought the initial reaction was a little bit much. It's like, it's probably not.
Do you think Knicks fans have conditioned to that? Because when you're a shitty team, every acquisition is like the biggest thing. Or you make a bigger deal about smaller acquisitions, right? Noah Vonleh signs. Oh my God, taking a flyer on like a guy with a lot of talent. You watch all the highlights. You're like, this guy could be a point forward. I'm not going to name names. Cough, cough. But if you're listening, you are. Or Hazonia. I was thrilled when they got Hazonia. That was the guy I wanted over KP in the draft. I think that was because of you. I think you wrote it. Did you write his Know the Prospect on PNT?
Hazonia?
Yeah. I feel like you had converted me when I was reading PNT.
I was pretty in the comments then. I was definitely in on Hazonia. But I was like, I didn't have like, I think Hazonia was my guy. That was like who I wanted them.
That was who I wanted over KP too. And
But I was fine. I was fine. Like when they took Porzingis, I was like, this is fine. Like I don't actually. There were people like when I mean, we don't need to relive it, but the people were like losing their minds about it. I was like, I mean, you're just gonna be mad about whoever they pick at this point.
And ended up being the right pick. But do you think there's like a thing where like every single move we made was like this could save us, right? Like I remember even when we traded David Lee, Kalina Azubuike, there's this long, like that guy,
Anthony Randolph.
Oh my god, I talked myself into Anthony Randolph point forward.
Every team's fan base has talked themselves into Anthony Randolph.
But I'm saying the Knicks, like we're adjusting still to being. This is what contending teams do. They find value where it exists, and if you can get a playable player who can play in the playoffs, I just said the word play many times, for this level of salary, you do it. And if your guys are good enough, they're good enough. And you trust your coach. And I think I don't think we're at the point where you have to worry like Deuce would actually be better, but Cam Payne would get minutes. No. I mean, Tibbs has played Deuce 46 minutes in a playoff game. If Deuce is good enough, he's playing. He has the skills that Tibbs values, point of attack defense. He was getting more aggressive. It just gives you more options so that you don't have to play Charlie Brown Jr. if you go down to 6 guys, right? So that, if there is a certain matchup that Deuce isn't great in, or Deuce gets into, Deuce does get into foul trouble. He's handsy. You have all these options, and this is just how championship teams operate. But from the hyper 24/7 news cycle that exists around sports, but also just we've been conditioned to think that every single move has to be a needle mover. No, the needle mover was Mikal this year,
you're just not going to get needle movers at the veteran minimum. I'm sorry, like this is like the Knicks had like 3 roster spots to fill out. They had the taxpayer mid level. They still have bird rights on Precious. We'll see what happens there. So one of these spots was going to be a veteran minimum anyway. And
I don't think anyone's disappointed in Cam Payne. He's worth a veteran minimum.
There's just like
I think there's people who are like, "Oh, he's going to take Deuce's minutes," which.
But there's just like serious analysis about it. It's like, dude, he's a veteran minimum guy. He's good. That's like he's like an actual NBA player you got at the veteran minimum. That's pretty much all you can ask for at the veteran minimum. Like, hey, are you a guy who can step in and play minutes and not completely destroy us? Cool, great. Let's go.
He did destroy us when he played actual minutes in the series.
Yeah, he had some good stretches. As far as like, is this unique to the Knicks? I don't know, man. I think fan bases in general are just like way too dialed in, especially when you're deep into NBA shit. Like, oh, I love this fucking fourth guard that he never gets burned on the fucking Timberwolves, but I love this guy. Like, I think he could be a steal. Like,
just add him, Prez.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean everybody does this though.
Yeah,
it's
also, if the word second apron is in your vocabulary, then you're
yeah. So like, I think I don't think it's just unique to the Knicks fan bases, but
do you think losing teams, right? Like losing teams are more.
Yeah, no, of course, you have to think about it, and that's kind of like that's why if we sucked and we signed Cam Payne, I've been like, what does this mean for? Are they out on Dennis Smith Jr. already? Like, holy
Frank
shit.
Ntilikina, come on. I believe in him.
Yeah, right. So those are the things you got to do. And now I don't think we really need to worry about that. You asked me if I think Grimes is malcontent earlier. I mean, he exuded a lot of malcontent energy throughout the season. That's what I will say. He towards his end of his time here, even when he played well, he just never really seemed happy. Did not seem like he was like really kind of enjoying the camaraderie of the team, let's say. He clearly was upset about being demoted. I think there's reason to believe he was upset that they signed Dante in the first place. And that's why, to me, like, that's a weak mindset. Like that, I'm sorry, that's like a weak mindset to me. I'm not saying he's never going to have success in his career. I'm not saying that he's never going to find, the form that, find the version of him that we thought, wow, this guy could be a starting 2 guard for us for a long time. I'm not saying that's gone and never coming back, but if you as a player see Dante DiVincenzo come in, Dante, like obviously Dante had a phenomenal season this past year, but at the time we signed him, and nobody was like, "Holy shit, the Knicks got Dante DiVincenzo. That's huge." If that's competition is too much for you and it bothers you, and you think you should be, that it you like there should not
right?
handed this role. Which, by the way, you were handed that role. Like the Knicks literally gave him that role when they benched Evan Fournier. Not because he had outplayed Emmanuel quickly to that point in time, but because they gave it to him. That was his role. They gave him that role. And he was still the starter at the start of this season. So he had every opportunity to win his role back or to expand his role, maintain his role, however you want to put it. And he failed. And that doesn't mean he will fail forever, but to the point of like, you have to be able to embrace competition and take it for what it is and fight for your place. Like, look at the Dallas team he's on. They're trying to win championships. They brought in Klay Thompson. They brought in Najee Marshall this offseason as well. Like, they still have Kyrie and Luka, both whose play time nominally on the wing.
They don't play Hardy at the 2 much, do they?
No, I think they should trade Hardy. He's not never going to be what they need him to be. And he doesn't have the opportunity there either.
Would you take Hardy or Cam Thomas?
I would probably just take Hardy just because I liked him in the draft for whatever reason. So
I liked what I've seen of him. It's a very specific role, but I think he's better at it than Cam Thomas. He's a better passer.
Yeah. So it's like, dude, what do you think is going to happen there? You're just going to be handed minutes? No. You have to fucking play for that shit. You have to earn it. And he's a year away from getting paid, so maybe his attitude will be better just because he's going to be like, well, I don't have an option. Like, I got to play for my contract. But yeah, like I do think that even if he wasn't some like I don't think he's going to bring down the locker room or something, but I think he was unhappy. And I think he probably made it very well known he was unhappy behind the scenes. Because if he didn't, we wouldn't have got bro, think about how many times
that 100-pound weight quote was insane.
Yeah, that was quick. But think about how many times Quickly could have rightfully bitched and moaned about his role, be it directly or indirectly by leaking to media or whatever. And we never heard anything.
Or Obi.
We
never complained either. And there were legitimate times he was outplaying Randall, even though he sucks.
And we never heard anything. We never heard anything from those guys. And Grimes this year, throughout the middle of the season, before he got traded, all we heard was like, it's not great. He might be traded. It's like, where's that coming from? Like, why would the Knicks just be floating out there? Hey, he's unhappy. He might want to get traded. Like that doesn't help them. So
sounds pretty grimy.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get his way out because I know he knew that his role was what it was. He wasn't changing. His role was going to be what it was this year. You're coming off the bench. You're going to play 15, 16 minutes max. That's your role. And that's what it is. And it didn't matter because he ended up getting hurt and barely played after the trade deadline anyway, so he wouldn't have helped us. But that was his role, and I think he was upset about that because I think he sees himself as like a $20 million plus per year type of player, and there's no path to that if you're not getting the minutes. And I understand that these guys they are playing for their NBA players have what on average like a 5 or 6 year career or something on average. Like it's not a high. So when you have the opportunity to cash in and you see it, like you're like, man, I'm 2 years away from that. Now I'm a year and a half away, but I'm not playing. Like I get why you want to get out and you want to find a situation where you're going to play more minutes. Funny thing about that is sometimes you end up somewhere where you still got to fight for your minutes. So there are no free lunches. Like this is the NBA, man. There's only how many? What is it? There's 450 roster spots. That's it. And until
one of them is going to LeBron James's kid.
Yeah. Oh, that's its own thing. And until you until there's expansion, that's it. There's no like you're fighting for a finite number of positions that exist in the NBA. So, good luck to him. I don't view him fondly. I'm not gonna lie. I don't.
You wouldn't fondle him?
I definitely would not fondle him. That's weird. I don't really feel any like
It's
you
not the
know
same as IQ or certainly IQ, but OB even. Or
yeah.
I don't know how you feel about RJ. I think there's still
I like
he's a good soldier.
I like to shit on RJ, but he's fine. He's good in my book.
I mean, he was always a good soldier. I mean, I think the thing is this, right? If you can't do anything off the dribble, I compare that quote in my mind. There's always 100-pound weight on my chest. To look, this has been deadpanned and fucking, or just not deadpan, panned. I would rather go 0 for 38 than 0 for 9 because that means I didn't have enough confidence. As insane as that is, especially considering the source, that's kind of how a shooter has to think.
I don't think that's
When he
insane at
said that,
all.
what?
I don't think it's insane at all. Like it's
It's just because
insane
it's
because you know
Waiters
that,
that it's
it's insane because you know the type of shots that Deion Waiters will be taking. But it's like Dante had games where he's like 2 of 11 from 3.
yeah, but there were playoff. Yeah, to your point, not
Yeah.
but.
But you got
To
to
your
keep
point,
fucking
there were
shooting
games where
those.
Grimes played 48 minutes in the playoffs, 0 for 2 from 3, right? And it's like, and as much as you and me were like arguing that, yeah, dude, but they respect him out there compared to Hart, he still has to put those shots up. Now, he doesn't put the shots up. He's not making them, and you're not doing it off the dribble. You gotta have that confidence, right? Like you have to understand your role, and I think that the context changed quickly. It can be tough as a young person to kind of deal with that kind of, I mean, all of us have probably been through that in our careers at some point where, you're a young person doing well and then you just get hit by a wall. And that's the ups and downs of life. And I'm sure Grimes will be fine. But when I heard that quote, I was like, it's going to be tough for him here, man. Because like next to Brunson, next to these guys, like we already got a hesitant shooter in Hart. Like if your main value is shooting, then you can't be having that.
Yeah. I mean, and look, DiVincenzo came into his exact role, came in and was launching up threes of volume. So it was not about the opportunity. It's about, are you going to take the opportunities? And you know what? A shot that Dante is willing to take is not a shot that a lot of NBA players can take, will take, or even view as shots they should be taking. That's a skill. That's why Dante was one of the best shooters in the NBA last year. Grimes isn't that. He's a good shooter from the corner, specifically from like the left corner or fucking corner it was. But he's not
Here's a
proven.
quick release. He's got a high release,
but he's not proven his chops as a high end shooter.
And the thing is, when you don't do other things at a high level, his defense dropped off too. That's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I mean that goes back to like the idea of like him kind of pouting this season. It's like I'm not, and if your defense drops off, okay, can you rebound for me? Can you play make? Can you do anything?
You dribble the ball?
Yeah, and he couldn't do any of those things. Like Josh Hart's defense dropped off towards the end of the season, especially towards the end of the season. But he's still out there rebounding his ass off, fucking hustling around the floor, whatever. Like
pushing the ball, yeah.
You can understand, especially with how much we were, pushing those guys at the end. Like you can understand where pieces of your game kind of fall off and whatever, but you still got to give me something. With Grimes, it was like, okay, your shot's not going in, you're not confident right now. That's fine. What else can you do so that I can keep you on the floor? And his defense fell off. He was not rebounding at all. At that point, it's like
on the floor.
Yeah, and at that point, what am I doing with you out there?
And it's important because I think 3-and-D doesn't exist, right? We were talking about this a little bit on the Strickland, but it's really 3-and-D plus. You have to at least, like Courtney Lee would struggle to find minutes, I think now. I mean, compared to when he played, even though he's a very good shooter and was capable on D, you have to be either elite, at least at one of those things, ideally 2, or you have to do more than those 2 things, right? You have to at least be able to. I mean, Batum is like the ideal of this, where he's a jack of all trades. But if you're an elite 3-point shooter, you have to at least be pass ball on D and be able to dribble a little bit, right? If you're a good 3-point shooter, you got to be solid on D and be able to dribble a little bit. The sum total of it was, if he wasn't shooting well, even if the defense was there, it's just championship teams require a lot more. And he was on that path in his second year. He started to have more drives to the basket. That summer league before second year, he really seemed to turn a corner, and it showed up in the season in terms of being aggressive with the ball. But he regressed a little bit last year, and maybe he was hurt. We don't know what's going on. I thought Detroit was a good place for him to end up to kind of try to remedy some of those things. We'll see what he can do in Dallas. If he wants to build that skill set out, I don't know if playing in such an ISO heavy place is going to be the best for him. But that's the thing. If you believe, the argument a lot of people made was like, he stands in the corner, he's cold, he doesn't touch the ball much, and then he just has to fire. That's tough. Well, that's going to be the case in Dallas for the most part. They're not running Quentin Grimes pick and rolls or much off-ball stuff for him.
Yeah, and you have to do stuff to get involved too, and he didn't do that. So whatever. As is the Knicks backup big situation remains unresolved. We saw Ariel Hukporty had a decent game today, probably his best. It was his best of the summer league so far. We've had Skipintsev. I think it's Dmitro Skipintsev. He's had some couple. He actually played well throughout the summer league. He's played well at the bench for the Knicks. They have Jericho Sims, who exists, and Precious Chua. Maybe not. Might be back. We don't know. But as is, it's just Sims, Hukporty on a two-way as our depth bigs on the roster right now. And obviously Mitchell Robinson as the starter. So I don't know. I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop here. It feels odd, but I also feel like, I know you're not a huge baseball guy, but I'm sure you're aware that like baseball free agency moves very slowly. I don't know if you're there. I'm assuming you're going to say yes. But yeah, baseball free agency moves quite slowly. Obviously, some of the best players often don't sign until the season has basically fucking started. So I wonder if the Knicks are just operating with a kind of level of calm in the sense of we don't anticipate the market moving for a while. And because of that, we're open to being flexible and taking our time to figure out how we want to address the situation. Now, we spent an entire pod last week talking about potentially trading for Karl Anthony Towns. I don't know that is on the table. I don't know that it will be on the table. I do think that maybe that's part of their thinking. Hey, if it is possible that he's on the table, let's wait it out. Let's see. I also think they don't feel there's a very big market for Precious Chua at this moment in time, and they're not worried about him signing somewhere. I would venture to guess they even have an agreement with him of like, hey, we'll give you X if you're going to be our backup big. If we need you for a sign and trade, we'll give you Y. Either way, you'll be better compensated working with us than you would be signing somewhere else outright. And then there's also just like opportunities happen over the course of an offseason. You never know what can shake loose. We know they kicked the tires on Kessler. We know they've kicked the tires on Nick Richards.
Do you think there's any truth to the Duran stuff?
Yeah, I think there could be. They signed, so they still have Stewart, and then they claimed Paul Reed off waivers, which is weird for a variety of reasons. I don't. Again, do I think they will trade Duran? The smart money is always on like a player will not get traded, generally speaking. So the smart money would be like, nah, he's probably not going anywhere. But it's not. It's Jalen Duran. It's not like we're talking about Victor Wembanyama or something. Like, yeah, I think Jalen Duran definitely could get traded. So to me, I just think this market is moving slowly. And Adam Silver talked about it in his comments to the press today. That with the changes of the aprons and stuff, this might just be how free agency and the offseason moves and things like that work. So it would not surprise me if the Knicks are just content to wait because they don't feel like there's a huge rush to do anything right now. And at least not at the cost of, look, if they just sign Precious Stewart right now, maybe that means somebody else shakes loose later in the offseason, but they can't explore that opportunity anymore because of the decisions they've and the moves they've already made. So I don't know. I'm not expecting, if it happened tomorrow, like they re-sign Precious, it wouldn't shock me. But I also would not be surprised if this plays out until maybe like early August.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact he hasn't the big market is thin, right? There have been worse bigs signed besides Precious. So if he hasn't signed yet, I think there's a sign that like, hey, we don't want to lose you for nothing. We have a plan for you that will be good and better than your alternative plans, and stick with us, right? In terms of the big question, no, the center question. Do you think it's more about like? I think you've made the case that you cannot rely on Mitchell Robinson as your starting center if you want to win a championship. Both health, limitations on offense, which to me makes the Precious question almost irrelevant. Like, okay, either way, you probably want to bring back Precious. If you somehow
unless Precious is a piece you need to use in trade, though.
Yeah, but then you only have one center, right? If you use Precious, you're saying Mitch as the backup?
Yeah.
You would be fine relying on Mitch as the backup.
I would love Mitch as a backup.
The health concerns still apply, and then now you have
but it's less of a concern. It's less of a concern if he's the backup, and I think you can I think you can manage his minutes better. I know last year was weird because he did get hurt when he was a backup, but I think he rushed back from an injury to do the team a solid.
He also got
he got
injured.
It was a joke. So like, I would feel much better about his ability to last for, let's say, 65, 70 games in a season if he's coming off the bench versus as a starter, where if he gave us 65, 70 games as a starter, that'd be amazing. Just seems very unlikely given his injury history.
Okay. And I guess the question is, if he's going to be the backup, though, is that $13 million wherever he's making this year? 15, I think, still.
No, it's like 13, I think, now. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Is that overpaid for that role?
No.
So if push came to shove, is your ideal Mitch as the backup and you obtain a center, or would you rather?
Yeah, that would be my
trade
ideal.
Mitch for a full time, someone. And
it just depends on who the starter is.
If we got Jared Allen, I feel like I would rather have Precious as the backup, to be honest. Because
if you got Jared Allen, I'm almost positive that Mitch would go out in some type of trade, maybe, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, I agree. If you have Jared Allen, maybe you prefer Precious because he gives you a little bit of a different type of look. But actually, in that scenario, I'd kind of love having Mitch because Allen's more skilled than him offensively, but defensively, Mitch is still better, and I think he does things matchup wise that Allen can't do, even if Allen's overall value to the starting lineup, given kind of what he provides offensively, exceeds Mitch. There'll be situations where it's like, hey, we're playing the Sixers. We need to, in Infinity War. Well, we've got we have a Hulk. And it's like, that's when you just get Mitchell Robinson out there. Like, all right, this is your time to shine, big guy. Like, this is what we saved you for all year. Stop Joel Embiid and make him want to commit homicide.
Do you think Allen gets traded at some point before the trade deadline?
Yeah.
In that case, should that factor into the Knicks? Like, let's say Deuce is an important trade chip there. Should that factor into them making a decision on a guy like Walker Kessler or let's say Nick Richards? Like, if they say, we think Allen's going to come available, it will take a little bit more, but we don't want to blow our load now on what should be a dry run prematurely.
Do
you think the fact that
look, my ideal scenario right now is just re-sign Precious. Like I actually
over trading for Kessler.
Yeah, I'm very strongly.
Really, you would prefer re-signing Precious to trading like Deuce and whatever protected picks for Kessler?
I don't even think I would trade Deuce straight up for Kessler.
Wow. You've been a little all over the place with this because I think you were not there. Like
initially I was like, and then the more I've like looked into Kessler, talked about him.
So Kessler doesn't move you as much as you're open to trading Deuce, but not that guy.
I'm sorry, like, why the fuck are the Jazz trading this guy? Like, I don't understand why what is the reason they're interested in trading this guy? And isn't that concerning? Because like we don't want to trade Deuce. You know what I mean? Like we're not trying to trade Deuce. We're open to trading Deuce if potential moves come along. But to me, like I've never seen one single report of like the Knicks are listening in on calls to like Deuce McBride. I mean, I'm sure that his name has come up in the court's conversation.
But when they go out of their way to mention it, it means that they're like shopping him.
It means that it's more than just like this team called about him and we told them no, we're good. It probably means like if you were Leon Rose and I'm a Danny Ainge and you call me and you're like, so we'd like to give you like Jericho Sims and the Wizards protected pick for Kessler. There's a difference between being like, get the fuck out of here, versus that's not going to cut it. There's a difference between those things, and I think Ainge is giving the latter vibe, where it's like, I don't want to give him away, but if you make a certain offer, I might. And like, why does he
buy
want
me tacos? You got to buy me a steak.
Yeah, and it's
right.
like, and at that point, right? And at that point, I'm like, well, a year ago, this guy was he's untouchable to you. Now we're listening, and like, wait, he just finished the second year of his rookie deal. Why do you want to trade this guy? You're in a rebuild. Isn't this if you value him and he's apparently this super valuable center, why the fuck do you want to trade him so early in his contract? I don't get that.
Lowry at the 5 more. Maybe they want to open up for.
They do not want to play. They want to trade fucking Lowry too. This is the problem with this. Is like we all know why. Like so, okay. So you're either trying to tell me that Kessler's so good that you can't tank with him, or you just don't want him anymore, which is fine. But at that point, I'm like, I'm a little worried. Yeah, I'm like, why do you want to get rid of this guy? He's a young guy on a rookie contract. The cap doesn't matter to you because you got a fucking they have like $37 million in space right now as is. Like, what's the reason for that? Even if it's a play style concern thing, like, come on, dude. Or you can't. You're just so anti having like a traditional rim running center. You just can't have him out there at all. Not even as like it's a bit much to me. I don't know. I think something is off there. I mean, I know it was Summer League and it's whatever. Zach Edey's probably really pumped up. I didn't like how that matchup looked physically. I thought he got bullied, pushed around. I thought he looked weak, in all honesty. And his offensive numbers are not particularly good. Like, he's not like the skilled offense. Like, we talked about Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren has not had anywhere near the positive impact at times that Kessler's had in his career. But like, when you just think about, okay, take talented player from bad situation because we think this guy can be better in a good situation, you're trying to at least look for the overwhelming talent. And like, whatever you say about Jalen Duren, there are things he does where you're like, okay, this guy he's a monster offensive rebounder. He's clearly got offensive game beyond like rim running, right? Like there's potential to build out on. The tools are there for him to be an active defender. I mean, he's a guy you were really high on as far as the bigs in that draft, in terms of his ability to switch out onto the perimeter. And from what I've seen from him athletically, that's not actually crazy at all. And you talk about Tom Thibodeau and how he coaches his centers up. Like, if you were to make me choose between those guys, I'd probably be like, just give me Duren, because I think
trying to win a championship though this year.
But I don't think Kessler's not helping win a championship this year. That's where I've come down to this.
Okay, I think then you don't do the trade,
right? I'm just I don't know.
Disagree because he's proven more. He's proven that he can be an impact defender, which is ideally what this team.
But he's proven he can be an impact defender in Utah. I think that is very different than being an impact defender on a team
next to OG Anunoby and
no. On a team that has championship expectations. That's a very different standard. Being an impact defender on a team where you're like the only good defender is not that meaningful of a bar. That's
Yeah,
kind
but
of
it's
like
not just on off. It's also like the rim protection numbers.
right, but the rim protection is going. But like, okay,
Like he's just been they have been good defensively with him on the floor. Like
they
not
were his first
better than
year.
they
He
were.
took a step back last year, and I'm like, and I'm just, maybe that's just weird second year stuff that happens. That's not like it's not like he wouldn't be the first guy to have a sophomore slump, right? And then he's fine. Actually, it's not a big
Like
deal.
Bones Highland.
Yeah, that's exactly the guy I was thinking of. But like, it's possible. I just get a little weirded out when all of a sudden it's Mr. Untouchable is now apparently, we can take calls on him, and oh, we're listening, but we won't give you for cheap. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, like I don't know what the hell fucking Walker Kessler's done in his career to be worth Deuce McBride and plus stuff. Deuce has an extra year in his contract. I still don't understand how people think that like that shouldn't matter. That matters. That's a large part of kind of like the value of players, especially with this new CBA, is how long do you have them under contract? How cheap are they? Deuce McBride's really cheap. And honestly, you might have a better chance of keeping Deuce for cheap because the guard market is so much deeper. So if Deuce is good for you, you probably have a better chance of retaining him, and you get full bird rights on him. So that's not a problem. You're not going to be outbid necessarily. He's also more versatile in his lineups, right? Kessler can only play the 5. He can't play 4. He can't play 3. He can't do anything. You can't use him in a variety of different looks. Deuce, you can use him in a variety of different looks. I mean, he's a guy that could play next to a ton of different players in the NBA, right? If you threw Deuce McBride right now and you're just like, go play for the Dallas Mavericks, he'd be fucking awesome on Dallas. He'd be great for them. Like, you can throw Deuce McBride on any roster in the NBA and he'll get minutes. You cannot throw Walker Kessler on every team in the NBA and he's like walking into his starting role or whatever. And that's what he wants. He clearly wants to be a starting center in the NBA. So if you're trading for him, you have to trade for him believing that he can be a starting center on a championship team. And in the Knicks case, that needs to be like today. And you need to be so comfortable to do it or in trading for him with the understanding that, hey, we're going to have to pay this guy in a year, 2 years. Or 2 years is when his new contract would kick in. But like, that's what you're trading because that's what he wants. He wants to be a starting center, which comes with a certain level of money, certain paycheck. I don't know. I'm not against it. Like I'll put it this way: if tomorrow if it was like the Knicks trade Deuce McBride for Walker Kessler, I'm not gonna have a fucking meltdown about it. Like I don't. As much as I'm saying like I don't think I would do it straight up, it's not like a slam dunk to me. And if you feel differently, I wouldn't be like, how could you think that way? I think it's completely. I would actually say I have the minority opinion, so I totally get that. But I don't think Deuce McBride plus is actually a particularly good trade for the Knicks. No, I don't. That's what I've settled on.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, you have to trust their judgment. But it sounds like, and I think I'm getting here too. Like Duran, from a value perspective, is almost too good to turn down. Although I have serious concerns about how quickly he can get up to speed on defense, and ultimately that matters a lot more to me than can you do quote unquote things on offense. But if you think Allen is going to become available for a reasonable price that doesn't cost you Dante, maybe cost you Deuce, but you're giving him up probably here in one of these trades anyway. You wait and you bring back Precious in the games where Mitch is hurt. You eat some minutes of Sims, you play Randall more at the 5. You're probably so talented that it's not going to sink you. And you wait that out. If you're really confident that Allen is going to be available, because that is probably the perfect guy, especially if you can pair him with Mitch and not have to send him out, but you probably will have to. But if you have Precious at that point, then, you're in a better spot anyway.
Yeah. By the way, Caitlin Clark had 24 points and 19 assists tonight. Jesus.
19. Wow.
Yeah. Pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. I just, the Deuce thing is just, it's like, I think there's an argument for Knicks fans overrate him. Maybe I'm overrating him, but like, I don't know. Maybe I don't think who the fuck watches Utah, man. Nobody's watching the Jazz, and this idea that we
GG
should just,
Redick probably did.
no, he definitely didn't. This fucking guy didn't even vote Anthony Davis for either of the defensive teams. I don't know what the fuck he was watching last year. But like, I don't know why we just need to accept like, well, Kessler's better. It's like, well, okay,
I don't know if he's better. It's more about the team needs, right? Like
maybe, but that's
I think
but
people
like,
are looking at Jericho Sims playing significant minutes and scared to death, which I think you are too.
yeah, of course I am. But like, that's what I'm saying. Just bring back Precious, and then I think you see what's out there in season, in the trade market. Like,
Do you
guys,
buy that there's any truth to the idea that Precious may not want to come back, and that's why he hasn't signed?
no, I don't know. Like, is there some? Like, name me the team that if he signed for them right now, he would 100% play next year.
Detroit. A good team. Well, Philly signed Drummond, although I think there's an argument. I'm a Precious homer, I guess. Boston has so many injuries, that's not out of the question. Who is Miami's backup five? Is it Kevin Love?
Kalel Ware, right?
Okay, so they're gonna test that. There's always minutes in Charlotte, but you're rolling your eyes at Detroit, so Charlotte is the same thing. Chicago, they're still trying to win.
Are they?
Actually, I have a team that should be interested. Do they even play Aaron Gordon much at the 5?
They were when they won the championship, but they have less money than us to spend. And their backup fives always get shit on because it's like people are like, I can't. Yeah, they're like, oh my god, we're losing the non-Jokic minutes. Like, yeah, dude, you're losing the non-Jokic minutes because nobody in the fucking world is Jokic at all. Like, that's why you're losing them. Hartenstein was there, and they were like, oh, this guy's trash. It's like, no, he's just not Nikola Jokic. It's very, very difficult.
San Antonio. Yeah, so I'm trying to think.
They just re-signed Bassi and Mamu Kelashvili today.
He's a fun player there.
He is fun. He's just not good, but he is fun.
The Clippers have Zubac, and
they can't give him as much money as we can.
Orlando doesn't have any money left, and they have a million bigs. Yeah, so I mean, I also think like if there was a team, it would have happened, right? It happened.
That's what I'm saying. Like it. So I don't buy that idea. Like so, I think the Knicks have an understanding with them. So I'm not too worried about. I mean, I'm always a little bit worried about it, but I'm not that worried about. Like, I will say every time like someone will send like a Woj tweet and they're like, "Fuck," I'm like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Oh my god, did Precious sign somewhere else?" And it's like, no, it's like, oh, the fucking Cavs added assistant from South fucking Alabama State to their staff. I'm like, oh, doesn't seem like a huge deal.
Yeah, you never want to be the boy who cried Woj. So, I think, but also like all of this is like, I think at some point, Knicks fans are going to like blink, maybe when preseason starts and be like, it's kind of like after the Quickly trade, you had that day or 2 days where we were all like hand wringing. Did we give up too much? All this stuff about OG. And then you watch the team and it's just like, oh, right. We give up 4 unprotected firsts for Mikal Bridges. What are their moves? We might have to play Jericho Sims minutes. Then you watch him get out and play, even in preseason. I think they're pretty fucking awesome. Like, I buy Bridges' defense coming back. I buy a little bit of untapped upside in a smaller role, like having that. I'm going to use the Goldilocks analogy here, right? When he was in Phoenix, he stayed on the corner a lot. When he's in Brooklyn, he's the number one option. That secondary playmaking option is not something he's gotten to play much. I think that'll really be a better fit for his skills, especially when it's just him and Brunson. You really see that shine, or if he's aiding Randall with the second unit against bench players. I think that there's a lot of hand wringing because people know how close we are, but also it's because of what we do. And when the team actually gets on the floor, like even if they don't bring back Precious and Jericho Sims has to play some minutes, this team is going to be fucking good.
Yeah, the team seems really good, and that's why kind of like you almost because they're going to be really good, it buys you time. Like you don't. Yes, it'll be. Will it be annoying if the Knicks lose a game in like November because Mitch is out and our center rotation is fucking Precious and
Ariel Hukporti.
Yeah, Ariel Hukporti. Sure, that'll be annoying, but like it will be. It's so now the Knicks have much more limited assets, right? So there's like a very significant opportunity cost to making moves when you make them. So I generally think the way this works is people always say like at the deadline is sometimes the worst. I actually think that's like the best time to trade for players. I think in season is the best time to make trades because this point in the offseason, like the offseason is when everybody's trying to do things and there's kind of like a frenzy. And especially this point in the offseason where for the most part, every team's roster is like more or less settled, right? So when and people are going to go on vacation now, right? Front offices are checking out for the summer after Vegas. This is like the time where nobody wants to do shit. So to get people to do shit, you got to like pay more than probably what it's worth. And I don't know that that's a particularly great time to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no value to be had or you can never find value or whatever, or that nothing will happen. You know, James Harden got fucking traded from OKC literally during training camp. Like 6th man of the year got traded during training camp of the start of the next season. You know, like we've seen significant moves and big things happen during this time of massive consequence. But like usually this is the time where people check out and it's a slow burn. So you know, I personally would just probably again just bring back Precious. Let's let Brock and all these guys go home for the summer. Maybe go to the Hamptons for a bit, relax, come back well rested. We'll get down to work. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just I'm not that worried about any of it, to be honest.
Yeah, makes sense. Shifting gears a little bit, Summer League has been going on, which along with all this speculation, Knicks fans are probably paying entirely too much attention to, but that's what we do. Thoughts. Let's start with the Knicks first round pick. Pacome. Is it Pacome or Pacome?
Pacome.
Pacome Dadier.
Dadier.
Pacome Dadier. I did better than Josh Hart, so you gotta give me credit for that. What are your thoughts there?
I like the flashes I've seen. He's obviously nowhere close to being a rotation player, certainly not for the Knicks, and that's fine. They didn't draft him to be that. They drafted him to throw in Westchester. Let's come back in 12 months and see where he's at. So I like what I've seen of him, the flashes of it. I see the vision. But the vision, it's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we still got to walk the tunnel, you know? So,
is it a light at the end of the tunnel? Like on a scale of light at the end of the tunnel to a vision you get under ayahuasca? Where is on that scale? Where is it at?
I have never done ayahuasca, so I don't know. I can answer this question. We maybe need to.
How theoretical is it? I mean, compared to
Aaron Rodgers.
Well, no, let's the comp I think that came to mind for me. And again, I'm not saying this to pan the pick. There is a difference between a 25th pick when you are a championship contender that could use an upside swing for cheap versus you're taking the pick 9th and you desperately need guys who can contribute. And there's, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Mikal Bridges and Michael Porter Jr.
No, this is not Kevin Knight.
No, but seeing him from Summer League, because Kevin Knox's Summer League was very encouraging.
No, I'm much more encouraged by this because I'll say this. At that time, I was much more focused on like, oh my God, we need talent. We need guys that can score. We need to get guys that can put the ball in the bucket. And Knox was filling up the bucket in Summer League, right? He's getting his shots up, a lot of threes, whatever. I think Dadier's shown more defensive aptitude than Kevin Knox has to date. And that to me is the biggest thing where I'm like, he's big, man. He's bigger now than I feel like Knox even is,
and he plays pretty long at least. He's not as physical,
his defense has been his rebounding definitely needs work, but like his actual defense has been like significantly better than I anticipated. Now maybe he's also aware of like the knocks on him coming in, so he's hyper focusing on that. But that would be a good thing, right? That's like an understanding of like, okay, I actually am weak in this, so I need to focus on getting better at it. No, I'm honestly very encouraged by what I've seen of him, while understanding he's far away from being a quality NBA rotation player. But I see the vision. I'm happy with the pick for what it was. And they are allowed to take that swing because of the work they have done. And this is a good time for them. Like, you don't have rotation minutes. You just don't have them. You don't have rotation minutes, especially not at his spot, right? So why not take the swing on this guy? Keep him, put him in Westchester, see what he does, come back in the year, let's see where he's at. Maybe in a year looks different. He's much closer, but he's not there yet, and that's okay. I'm more than okay with what I've seen from Pacome so far.
Yeah, I will say they don't have minutes if Khalil Ware was there, or if they had the opportunity to get a guy like Edey, or even maybe Yves Missy. I think they would have taken that. Maybe
if Edey was there, if they didn't take him, I'd have been fucking furious.
Missy?
Edey,
but Ware, I think also. I think they liked Khalil.
I think they
had good intel on him because of Woodson, probably.
They would have taken either of those guys, no question.
But they didn't put a high enough value on any of the other bigs that were available. I liked Adam Bona personally, but I'll trust this front office's valuation. Whatever you want to say about Jericho Sims, getting him out of 58 was pretty good. I think that the defense, to your point, has been the biggest surprise because it was the thing that everyone from Sam Vecini to like the highest Knicks bloggers emphasized, that this guy doesn't play very physical. He has flashes, but is not consistent. And I think to that point in Summer League, he still gets lost a lot. Now everybody gets lost in Summer League because guys are going to play it together and all that. But to your point, like you said, it shows some self-awareness. This is what I need to improve on. He's been rumored to be the intel on him is that he's a very coachable guy. That's what people have said. It reminds me a little bit about, KP, fairly or unfairly was cast as this kind of soft European big. And in Summer League, he got bullied a little bit by Jahlil Okafor. He started fronting him in the post. So it told me at that time that this is a guy that is not just going to say, I'm going to be able to shoot and, block the occasional shot and make some dunks. He was willing to work on those parts of the game, right? Whatever you think about how KP's career has turned out, I don't think that's ever been a question, his drive to get better. So I think that's very encouraging. I think I'm not worried about the shooting at all, to be honest. The shooting has been the weak thing. Look, young guys just don't have the reps. Like,
and it's also just a super small sample. We're talking about 3 games, right? So
small sample. He had a very good shooting numbers in Germany, but think about this: the guys who come in as good shooters. Steph played 3 years in college. Trae Young, still, his accuracy took some time to get up there. Like, he was taking 10 threes a game. He's hitting 34%. Same thing's happening with Luka.
Even look at like a lesser player, but like Emmanuel Quickly, like, do you remember, like, he and even with him, like, his percentages were pretty solid each year, but like he'd have these huge swings in season, right? And last year was the first year where it was like he consistently shot well from 3 the whole year.
And even he spent 2 years in college, right?
Right. And that's that's what I'm saying. Like, shooting is a thing that just takes time to stabilize, and it's why I think so many shooters bounce around until they like find a home, right? Because it's like it takes time. It is not the easiest thing, and it's also a mental thing. Like we just talked about with Grimes, right? Like, it wouldn't surprise me if in 3 years or something, Grimes is a 38% shooter. And he's
already, so yeah,
and he's kind of like doing it on good volume and whatever. Like, it wouldn't surprise me because it is a confidence thing. Like, you can lose your confidence. But we saw fucking Buddy Hield, who's one of the best shooters. Whatever else you think of him, he's one of the best shooters to ever play the game. He had no confidence for like the first 5. Like, he literally was unplayable for most of that opening round series. And then as a Hail Mary, Nick Nurse threw him in Game 6 and he caught fire, but like that can like if a guy like Buddy Hield can lose confidence, like that kind of speaks to the point of why I don't. It's more about like how do you look, and the thing I can say about Dadier, and I talked about this in the post game today, is it's just like what I've been very encouraged by is he's not trying to do too much for the most part. He's like playing within himself, and he's not trying to jack up shots as soon as he gets it every single time. He's
like
making
Dwayne Washington.
Yeah. Oh God. Fucking. Oh my God. I can't wait for Friday to be over so I never have to watch him play again. Hopefully.
Yeah. No. It's Yeah, I think the form looks good. Prez is still in the form. The percentages are good. And like, look, reps matter. Rajon Rondo, by the end of his career, one of the most hopeless shooters ever, became a 35% three-point shooter. Jason Kidd, by the end of his career, was a knockdown, catch and shoot guy. Like, this is one of those things where doing it thousands and thousands and thousands of times makes a difference. And if you haven't done it that much, you're just not going to be at the NBA level as consistently, to your point, right? You're going to have higher variance. The fact that he has a good baseline, good form, he can get his shot off from difficult angles matters. And I think the fact that, clearly the desire and the tools are there on defense, this is the kind of guy that you marinate in Westchester a little bit. The guy who's looked a lot more polished, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, is Tyler Kolek, who has thrown some flashy passes, really showed a command of the offense. There have been people who said, he'll be the best passer on the roster, which is a crazy thing to say. I think Brunson's a little bit underrated there, but he clearly misses reads more often than you'd like him to as a starting point guard. And Kolek is just ahead of the game so much, right? I think I said flashy passes, but a lot of it is kind of that Tom Brady thing where you're just anticipating 2 or 3 moves ahead, and you can make the easy pass because you're seeing it before it even becomes easy. And he showed a little bit of the pull-up game, had the game winner, has the confidence. If you watched his post-game interview, again, you're replacing essentially Malachi Flynn, Alec Burks with this guy. And it's a point guard with experience that the Knicks are taking in the 25 to 35 range. I have to feel pretty good about Kolek's summer league. I don't think it's funny because Prez, who was a big Kolek guy, was a little bit down on his first performance. He probably does need to be a little more aggressive scoring, but it's tough not to be pretty encouraged. And he certainly, it seems more Pablo than like Elfrid Payton, if you will, where it's not that he can't score. He seems a little reticent. The pull-up game, the release may be a little bit too slow for that right now. But there's a lot to like there.
Yeah, I think that Kolek is what I was expecting him to be for the most part. He's had some ups and downs as far as looking for his shot, but I also think he's geared to be a playmaker in a lot of ways, and so for him, it's kind of recalibrating it and doing, and especially like this is the thing on this roster, summer league roster. Yeah, he needs to shoot more. If he starts playing with the big Knicks, his game is going to be just fucking handy.
On that note, though, if he is running bench minutes at some point, right, as a point guard, he's likely to be playing next to Randall, right? Because this goes to a bigger question. A lot of people, especially when Randall had the slump, were like, well, Randall isn't getting any baseline jumpers, or there's something special about Alfred or a playmaking point guard who can get him the ball in his spots. Does that matter to him? I think intuitively to you and me, it's like, no, we'd prefer a guy who is going to fire when he throws it out to him, like Deuce. Do you think that specific situation maybe could be not, with Kolek maybe being reticent to shoot a little bit? Initially?
I haven't noticed him being reticent on catch and shoots though. Like his reticence, at least from what I've seen so far, and look, hands up, I have not, and I will not ever watch college Kolek tape in all likelihood. But from what I've seen of him in these 3 games, I haven't noticed a reticence to shoot on spot ups, catch and shoots, whatever. It's the, hey, we need you to, run the offense and go get us a shot right now. That's when he's kind of shown a little bit of an issue. But today he was a lot better at that too. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's something to be concerned about. But when I think about the way he plays, and it's like you put him in a lineup with Bridges and OG and Dante or something. I mean, or Deuce or whatever it is. Like, I'm like, I could see this guy really just racking up some assist numbers and doing some damage, especially like, you're playing some shit team in like December or something. It's a situation where you could definitely see him put up numbers.
Yeah. No. What have you thought about the defense?
Well, he tries. I will say that.
I think that TJ McConnell comps, as he himself said, are just.
I don't get that at all.
Yeah, it's I think he's more skilled as a playmaker. Not to say TJ McConnell isn't skilled or doesn't have good passing vision, but it is a little unorthodox. Kolek has that mold of like a traditional point guard where he gets downhill, but he keeps his head up, can exploit any area of the floor. TJ McConnell, it's very specific things that he's very good at. And then on defense, I don't know there's comparison, and I do think Kolek is a much more gifted shooter. I think there's other comps. I almost said Peyton Pritchard, but also want to avoid that one. But he's a very steady point guard. I don't think it hurts to have one on the roster, especially, I think Deuce will get minutes over him. I think ultimately Deuce has still upside as a playmaker. I think he improved there quite a bit, but you don't have that proven type of guy. Even Brunson isn't that archetype, right? He is. I mean, imagine if Kolek really pops and you can play him next to Brunson and open up some more of that off-ball stuff, which we were desperately starved of. After Randall got hurt, there's a lot to like about this pick. You had mentioned this. A lot of people had been hopeful. Could Ariel Hukporti maybe take over the Jericho Sims spot, give you a little bit of insurance at the 5 position? It seems to be a little bit underwhelming on that regard. He seems a lot like, I don't want to say just a guy, but not particularly athletic. Seems to know where to be at where he's supposed to be. Decent finishing ability, but nothing that really pops. That's kind of my impression on Hukporti so far.
Yeah, I mean, he had his best game today. I thought he looked a little more spry. Maybe he had to get his legs under him. But yeah, he's not going to be some huge athlete. I think defensively, he's not getting into foul trouble, which I think is interesting. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. I also felt like his positioning has gradually improved over these 3 games. So I wonder if there's a difference in what we're asking of him versus what he maybe is used to, or maybe if there's just general confusion because it's summer league and nobody knows what the fuck they're doing, that it's exposing him in ways that he wouldn't be otherwise. I'm still pretty okay with what I've seen as far as like just, we gave him a 2-way deal. No problem with that. And I'm still intrigued because there's stuff that he does. Like, I think his pick and roll play as offensively as the roll man has been very good. He's got good hands, which is huge. Like, as great as Mitch is at finishing lobs, there's a reason why he never gets a high volume as a pick and roll finisher, because you're not always going to get lobs. You're going to have to like get the ball short of the rim and maybe put the ball on the floor, or maybe somebody meets you. So you got to do something. Like, Hukporti has really good hands to catch cleanly. He's got some finesse to his finishing, even if he's not a particularly great finisher. And he's flashed a little bit of decent footwork and playmaking that I think it's intriguing. I'm not saying it's amazing. I'm just saying it's intriguing. The odds are the 58th pick of the draft is just a guy. That's just how it works. But I still would like to see him with the big Knicks and see what that looks like, because I feel like, I mean, I trust me, this is not me saying he's better than Mitch, but I could totally see him having a much better connection with like Jalen Brunson offensively than Mitch.
I mean, I can definitely see him better than Jericho Sims. So
yeah, I mean, that doesn't need to be said. But yeah, like it's one of those things where, like Kolek, I would just like to see him get a chance with like better players and see him in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a jack of all trades thing where at the end of the day you have a big body who can do things, who can hold up. He's not going to kill you much on either end. He's not going to change the game. But if you got to steal 8 to 10 minutes, in a playoff game, maybe an option. I still think they will seek other options, but
yeah, absolutely. And I
he's
think
a
they
little bit
should.
older.
And they should. Like we just said about kind of like they're in a contention. Like they're in a contention window. We talked about this on several pods. We talked about this earlier in this pod. Like you can't really be a contender and go into the season being like, well, Ariel Huckworthy is our third center. It's like, really? That's the fucking plan here? Like that can't be your plan. They still got to do something. But yeah, I'm fine with what I've seen. I'm not going to act like I've been amazed by it. I'm fine with what I've seen. And I'm still intrigued to bring him in and see what he can do.
We got to talk about Rokas Jokubaitis, who has not come over for a couple of seasons. His first summer league stint was underwhelming. Had some good moments. I thought he played well today.
He's
Threw
great
down
today.
a dunk. Throw down a dunk, which Prez noted is something he very rarely does. So could speak to his level of investment and wanting to really prove himself on this Knicks team and come overseas.
Well, the other thing to remember too for summer league is it's a showcase for the entire league, not just the Knicks.
What did you think? Because that is a guy who, Prez's theory, or not theory, Prez's observation or conjecture has been, given kind of the sets that are run in Europe, given that this is a guy who's good when he can get downhill, he runs pick and roll, he likes the ball in his hands, as well as the nature of EuroLeague being pretty, or the Spanish league being pretty vet heavy in terms of minutes. How much do you think that matched up with what you saw in summer league?
The first two games were not particularly great for him. I actually thought he was terrible against the Nets. Like, just could not handle the pressure defense at all. He was much better today, even though he still struggled against pressure briefly at times. But 7-7 from the field, 16 points, 5 assists today. He played as well as he could have offensively in a lot of ways. I think the shooting numbers, I know were not great all the time, but like he looks like a good shooter to me. It feels like he knows where his shots are. When he has the advantage, like when he can kind of dictate to the defender, I think he's got a knack for creating space for himself. He still kind of drives a little bit recklessly to me. Like, I don't know that he always has a plan when he puts the ball on the deck. I never know if this is fair or not, because I think we just notice it more with lefties, but he does feel very left-hand dominant in terms of like his ability to put the ball on the floor with his right versus his left. But I don't know if that's fair. I also wonder if he's not really a point guard and more of a combo, and if he would just benefit a lot from playing with another person that can handle the ball. Him and Kolek played really well in their minutes today together, I thought. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on if the Knicks do retain him or wherever he ends up.
Yeah. No, I think ball pressure is the thing that Deuce struggled with the most too. And that just prevents anything. It prevents you from judging, I think, anything else the player does, right? Could have great passing vision, could have good scoring ability. If you can't get to a start, it's a non-starter, literally. It is exciting to see him play. This is a guy the Knicks have had for a couple of years. If he shows out well, they can use his draft rights still. But overall, I think there's a lot to be encouraged about. The Knicks are functioning like a team with like a good farm system, to be honest. And they've done well in Westchester. We saw how much Deuce benefited. And guys like Sims and Grimes also benefited from getting time down there. Did Quickly ever go down to Westchester, even for like a game or two?
No, never.
I like the pride in the voice when he said that. They are functioning with a well-run organization, and there's a lot to like. Here's to Pacom Dadier carrying us in that 2031 season where Brunson's, the Master Splinter meme. He can be one of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, him and Deuce and Huckworthy and Kolek. That'll be the 5 when we win the championship. All right. I think that's a good place to end this. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPatton89. I'll plug all the great work at the Strickland. There's been some great articles out of late, and even my my esteemed co-host got in with a piece with Professor Miranda. So me with the Squidward meme, looking at my two past and present co-hosts. But it's a great article on Brunson and his contract his contract extension, which we didn't even talk about. But I think I'll add this. It's interesting where the luxury that you talked about, the Knicks being able to make the Dadier pick at 25. As you get more wealth, there are different things you want to do with it and different things you prioritize. Which I'm just mentioning that along with the Jalen Brunson piece is a pure coincidence, nothing correlated at all. But definitely check out that article and all the great work at the Strickland.
Thank you for those fine words. I have nothing to plug, so I guess I'll just plug the article that I did write with Miranda. Tried to keep up with the master, but sometimes you just have to do the best you can. But yeah, I think that came out well. Check out all the work, though. Yeah, like Stacey said, we've had a lot of articles come out the last couple of weeks, so definitely check that out. Aside from that, nothing. So I will be recording with the Prez tomorrow evening, so you will get back-to-back days of Pod Strickland. So look forward to that. Aside from that, that's nothing. So enjoy the rest of Summer League. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. Hope everybody has a great rest of the week, however long is left in it for you. And I will see you on Friday.